So when you're looking for positions on these different islands, have you generally, I guess, in regards to housing, have you interviewed, accepted a job, and then started looking for housing? Or is it kind of the other way around where, you see that there's a position open, you look and make sure housing, that there's options, and then you would go to submit an interview and try to get an offer for that position?
Actually, I kind of just made a mistake with this the other week. I would recommend looking at housing first. The mistake I just made is that I was applying to jobs on other islands, and I generally travel alone, but because we have an inter-island quarantine and everyone's working remotely, I'm going to travel with my boyfriend and dog. And I applied for a job that after I applied, I looked for housing and realized not a unit on the island would accept a large breed dog, which I happen to have. So unfortunately, I ended up talking to the manager at that building for like half an hour, who's a great guy. And at the end of it, he's like, would you take this job? And I'm like, honestly, I don't know how I can. Like, now that I'm looking at housing, I can't bring my dog. So yes, I would recommend looking for housing first, especially if you have any weird things that you need, like you're bringing an animal, which is a whole nother issue in Hawaii. You do have to go through kind of a quarantine process there. But yeah, I would generally kind of at least search for housing first, at least do a scan and make sure that something is affordable for where you're going and available, because prices can vary a lot too. And at different times of the year, if housing's booked, it can be hard to get an affordable unit.
Man, well, I feel like I used to work for a housing, or I guess like travel housing agency before I got this current position, and I feel like one of the issues in with finding housing in Hawaii, and definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like there was a big additional tax, maybe if you weren't like an actual resident of the city or something like that. There was like an additional fee or additional tax that was added on. So like you would think that your rent or whatnot would be X amount of dollars, and then when it came down to, I guess, brass tacks, if you will, it was a little bit more expensive than that. Can you talk to that about that at all, or does that sound
Yes,
familiar?
it's a short-term occupancy tax. So there are a lot of issues in Hawaii around people renting their apartments. It's kind of a hot issue. People are supposed to pay this occupancy tax for short-term rentals, and a lot of them get around it like by there's a lot of landlords who will make you pay cash, like literally make you withdraw like $1,000 from the ATM just so that they're kind of avoiding the fee. So I've heard. So yeah, it's there's definitely like some things going on here that are different, and in some ways it's like the wild wild west of housing. It's just you see people living in like carports or couches and saying like, yeah, I'm not on a lease, I'm hoping for the best, I'm paying cash. There's a little bit of everything here. It's definitely an interesting place. But yeah, the if you can, I think the hotel charge drops after 3 months. So if you can try to like book a whole stay instead of like a month to month, I think you can drop the hotel tax. But I'm not sure about that.
Well, and I guess, have you ever had an assignment that has provided housing for you, or have you always, I guess, had to find it on your own terms? And if you had housing provided, did you prefer that way, or did you like finding it on your own better?
I've never had housing provided for me, and I honestly wish in the beginning that I would have, because I didn't know what I was doing and I made mistakes. I lost money. Now I'm kind of stubborn that I know I can find a better deal than what an agency could find, even though it would
Sure.
take me more work. So now I just do my own thing. But oh man, I wish I would have just taken housing earlier in my career when I really didn't know what I was doing, and before like Furnish Finders was around. Like Furnish Finders is a great website. They connect travelers only with people who want to rent to travelers, basically. So that's a great resource. There's so many things we can do now that I always just find my own.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think as far as housing goes, I know that that's been kind of a pain point for therapists that are looking to travel. So I'm so glad that you are able to give us all these tips and everything. Something, those kind of horror stories that you hear about. I had heard of a therapist, not one of mine, but a therapist that had secured housing, paid for, the fee up front while they were still on the mainland, and then the person ghosted them. Is that something you've ever heard of happening before, or is there any suggestions that you'd make to try to avoid that by, maybe staying on a website like Airbnb or Furnish Finder, something like that?
Yeah, that's a really common scam. It happens all over Hawaii. And basically, what happens is that the person will post pictures maybe at the front of the house, or they'll grab pictures off of Zillows and say, I'm renting my house, usually at a really good deal. And they'll have like a low number of money, like 250, kind of something that's not worth credit card companies disputing over too much. They'll say, wire me $250 and, I'll reserve it. So anything that seems, first of all, too good to be true, I'd say it is. Then secondly, the best piece of advice I can give if you're still on Craigslist is ask for the property address. Then go online and Google the county. So like Honolulu's its own county. So Honolulu County tax records. And you can look up online the address and see who the owner of the house is. So property records, tax records are public records. So you can see if that person actually owns the house and kind of compare it to, the information they gave you. So that's what I've done in the past when I've had to send people a deposit, is actually verify through property records that they own the house. And I've never had a problem. And I believe that's what Furnish Finders does as well, is they verify every homeowner's ownership through property records. So you can do that online, but ultimately, if you don't feel safe talking to somebody online about renting their property, just come here, book a Airbnb for a week, maybe get a really cool place right on the water that you might spend a little more money for or something, and then just go in person and meet people and look around. There's going to be a lot more housing when you get here, because a lot of people are, again, we're kind of in the wild, wild west of housing. A lot of people don't even understand how the internet works, and they just put signs in their yards to advertise for rent. And that's actually how I found the house I'm in now, is a bulletin board sign that said, call me renting. So once you get here, there's a lot more options than you realize.